order. And we'll move first into the public hearing, and we'll turn the opening remarks over to Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much and good evening. So I think you received the technical report that was provided to the Planning Advisory Committee on October 27th. So I'm just going to use that to provide some highlights. I'm not going to go over letter and verse. I hope you've had a chance to do it. The purpose of this part of the meeting, of course, is to hear from the public. So I think we're kind of preaching to the choir, if I can put it that way. The application that you have in front of you is to rezone lands from residential low density to residential medium density. The lands are on 2nd Avenue, and they're owned by, forgive me if I don't get this right, San Siok Park and Mujinga Lee. The application has been made by Robin Park on their behalf. 2nd Avenue has been opened between Church and Mount Street, surrounded by pretty well-established institutional and residential development. The current municipal planning strategy enables 1 and 2 unit buildings in the residential low density. The proposal here is for the construction of a purpose-built 4-unit apartment building. So what we need to do is consider rezoning from that RLD to the RMD zone to permit the development to move ahead. The planning strategy has a variety of policies relating to residential development, and generally it's very supportive of new development, but it does require a public process like we're going through here to enable. And so specifically, policy R6 is an important policy that sets out the RMD zone as what is required to do 4 units. And then policy IM7, which is our general criteria for rezoning. So those are the 2 primary policies in the strategy that relate to this application. The policy R6 just basically requires that we go through the process of rezoning. The policy IM7 lays out the criteria, so I'm going to just touch on those kind of high level. The criteria sets out issues that we should consider to make sure that a rezoning or a development proposal is suitable for the location. And I'm just going to go through them. If you've got the report, it's basically starting on page 5. The adequacy of sewer and water is important. All development in the town needs to be serviced, and there is municipal sewer and water services available to the property. The adequacy of school facilities and other community facilities is important. Having a compact built form is important. It supports healthy living. It supports those services like schools, keeps enrollment up and that type of thing. We've confirmed that the Digby Elementary and the Digby Regional High School both have capacity to accommodate increased enrollment. Now this is a 4-unit development that's not likely to have a significant impact on school demands, but if it did create a requirement, there certainly is capacity. Fire protective services is another important thing. The properties in close proximity to the fire department and the protective services in town are capable of accommodating this type of development. So a stick-built residential structure is very similar to an awful lot of what else is in the town. And in terms of the techniques and the capacity of fire protection, this development doesn't represent any concerns. Of course, the adequacy of road networks is important. So on 2nd Avenue, recently opened for public use, constructed. There is through traffic opportunities and cross traffic, so both going north and south, and close intersections going east and west. So certainly well situated, handy to downtown, relatively easy to get out of town towards Highway 303 or 217. So well situated and well connected with the adjacent road network. And then in terms of road capacity, we also look at the type of traffic that a use could generate to make sure that there's not undue pressure on intersections, traffic volumes, and that type of thing. So again, 4-unit dwelling requiring or providing somewhere between 6 and 8 units for parking, and generating a very modest, if we're using 3.5 trips per day, an increase of perhaps somewhere between 20 and 30 traffic trips a day from the development. And certainly the adjacent road network carries significantly more than that now and has the capacity to accommodate the additional flows. We want to make sure that the financial impact on the town is understood. And the town has undertaken as part of its capital programming the upgrading of this portion of 2nd Street between Church and Mount. And it's not anticipated that this development itself would require any further upgrades to infrastructure. The lands are vacant, and so development actually will have a potentially positive impact on the tax base for the town, for sure. We've spoken about transportation. The lot itself, it's larger than an average single unit or single family lot. That's what the current zoning is. The proponent has provided a site plan that shows the ability to provide a fairly compact footprint for the new building, parking and circulation around, as well as some area for lawn or grass or amenity space. So it's probably tight, but not too tight. And the site plan clearly shows that all the minimum requirements of the bylaw can be met. In terms of compatibility with the adjacent development, as I said, there's a mix of development in the area, institutional uses, long-standing residential areas to the north and south. Some of those are single family, some of them are converted, and we're not that far from the high school. So it's generally kind of a mixed use area, and certainly additional residential development and medium density 4 units wouldn't be inconsistent with the range of uses that we find in the area, so residential and non-residential. Suitability of the site. We've noted that this part of town is fairly sloped, and in fact that the planning committee concerns or questions were identified about potential for storm drainage and the requirement for grading and perhaps stepping the property. That will be a requirement of the developer to ensure that the grading meets the town requirements. So grade is a concern. It's one that can be addressed with proper site planning. Other than that, in terms of environmental conditions or features, there isn't anything that would make development of this site unsuitable. And that sloped condition and the requirement for grading is general to the area. So if a development is going to take place adjacent to the west or the east, or to the north for that matter, it'll have the same conditions and the same requirements in terms of grading to integrate with the town infrastructure will be required. So looking at the property overall and the criteria that are set out in the MPS, it was identified that the general criteria, the proposal meets both the intent of the strategy and all of the provisions in policy IM7. So the committee's recommendation was that the Digby Land Use Bylaw Schedule A, which is the zoning map, be amended to rezone lands at St. Silk Park and Moyinja Lee at Second Avenue from residential low density RLD to residential medium density RMD.
Okay, so we had no written submissions.
No, there has been no written submissions that have been submitted.
And no one here tonight to make any oral submissions.
Unless the developer or the contractor has something they want to say.
It's all good.
Okay, any general discussion with anyone here? It's all good with it? All right. Then we'll get a motion for adjournment of the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right.
Great.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm happy to stick around for council's consideration if there might be questions.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll move into our regular agenda. Does anybody have any additions or deletions? We do have one addition under correspondence, H3, Digby Area Housing Coalition, request of a letter of reference and support. Anyone have anything else? If not, can I get approval for the agenda, please?
So moved.
Seconder?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Back up to public hearing for, we need a motion for the amendment. And the amendment is on your public hearing agenda, number 2. So someone like to make that motion? No? That's wrong? I almost made it a year.
Yeah.
Almost made it a year.
Very get down with minutes or business arising.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right, perfect. Okay.
Do what you're looking for.
All right, so we'll go to minutes of previous meeting. First time this year, I almost made it. All right, November 1st, 2021. It's all in your packages. Motion to accept.
Motion to accept the minutes as presented.
All right, seconder,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. November 23rd, 2021, special council meeting. Motion to accept that one.
Motion to accept the minutes.
And seconded. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we get into business arising. And we need do we need a motion for the second and final reading for the rezoning application to Second Avenue PID 303-80067?
Yep.
Yep, need a motion for that.
So moved.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. That's it. All right. Moving into the CEO report. We're good.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
No questions, no discussion.
Thanks.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Good. Yeah. All right. Oh, it's gone. I was just gonna wish you Merry Christmas. Get his Christmas presents. Shucks. All right, let's move into the CAO report.
Okay. So, first thing in my report is the mayor's and ward and CEO's meetings on the Lobster Fisheries dispute. So there was an in-person meeting with MPs Chris D'Entremont and Rick Perkins, which was held on November 12th. So there were some meeting notes. I wasn't in attendance, and I don't believe the mayor was able to attend either. So these are the notes that was provided by the group. I don't know if you want me to go through them or everybody's had a chance to read them.
Everybody had a chance to read them, there's a lot of,
Yeah, I read them.
good.
So then there was a virtual meeting of CAOs on the 23rd, and so basically that was based on, to discuss some of the things that were discussed at the MP meeting, and so basically the MPs felt that we should be reaching out to local First Nations, and but as a group, we felt that that would be exiting our lanes at this particular time, and that basically we are at we should be building relationships with First Nations, not just because of this, or in spite of this fishery dispute, but in other things. I told the group that the town of Digby had been working with Bear River First Nations and trying to build a relationship and a rapport, and that we didn't want anything to jeopardize that because, Bear River First Nations is the majority shareholder and one of our largest properties in town, and so in fact could very well be again our largest taxpayer. So and they sort of agreed that, you know, we stepping outside of what we've been focusing on, which has been public safety and the economy, and was the thing to do at this point. So there was a meeting of the mayors and wardens and CEOs that was to be scheduled, and that schedule is, or that meeting was held this afternoon at 3:30 via Zoom. I don't think there was any takeaways from that meeting other than we're gonna wait until after Christmas into January and start seeing whether we get responses from the letters and things and start moving forward again a little bit. So next item is the Community Navigator meeting. That was held on the 29th, and I wasn't in attendance because I didn't have a confirmation, didn't receive a confirmation, leaving confirmation to place in my calendar. So, Jeff Sunderland briefed me on the meeting. So basically, the end of the meeting, I guess we are having a meeting tomorrow. Jeff and I and a couple of people of the Community Help Board to discuss around the Community Navigator budget, and so anyway, Jeff and I have discussed that a little bit, and we're just we'll see what Community Help Board or Health Services Charitable Foundation, I guess that should be, because there is a health board too, so I don't want to get too mixed up. So see what they have to bring forward, but it kind of looks like that they want to move ahead with this program, and I guess Jeff and I are going to take a more cautious approach and say that, you know, basically we should have more partners, funding partners. That's the difference between Digby and Yarmouth. Yarmouth's Help Board, or not Help Board, but their Chamber of Commerce. I mean, it's a very active Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, it's really bounced back.
Huh?
The Yarmouth's really bounced back.
Yeah, and so you know, we don't have that here. We have a Digby Area Board of Trade, but they're not as active or as they probably could be. And so basically, the Community Navigator in Yarmouth is a project of the Chamber of Commerce. It's got nothing to do with the health board other than being contributing funder, right? So, and the province also helped fund that one. So we're hoping that our MLA will be able to find some dollar here and a dollar there laying on the floor after, they've thrown all this money around for other things. So must be a little bit left on the floor.
Hopefully.
So Tom, with the MLA, it mentioned a 3-year, hopefully, she stated she may be able to some funding for 3 years. Is that for the whole program, or does that mean that the Board of Trade would have to apply for that?
I think that basically the thing is they threw in 3 years because that's in 3 years, that's what that program in Yarmouth has been running and being funded as a 3-year program. And then they'll, if they find it successful, then they'll try to keep it funded. But usually, and I think that's what they're looking for, is the Digby one to be at least a 3-year pilot project or whatever, and to see whether it's working, and so it get evaluated. Because no good, it's a fair chunk of change that they're going to be probably asking 2 municipal units for. There's 3 municipal units that were asked for funding in Yarmouth, and their funding commitment was $20,000 each, right? So they had $60,000 between the 2 of them. I think we're getting asked for $30,000 to $40,000 or more originally. So it's almost double of what the units had put in Yarmouth. Of course, there is one other unit there, but
We'd probably get Annapolis, a municipality of Annapolis, I would think, since most of the people in Annapolis are sent down here when Annapolis is closed most of the time. I don't know.
yeah.
Food for thought.
Municipality might.
Yeah, municipality, right?
So anyway, we're gonna see what happens tomorrow, and I'll bring forward what comes out of that meeting. And so on the grants committee, so basically I have drafted a job description for a community development coordinator. That's seems to be the title that I sort of settled on. Now it's carved in stone. So the position would be under the direction of the CAO, who would provide leadership and guidance in identifying, securing, and managing funding opportunities for municipal priorities initiatives, and is also responsible for coordinating communications activities, facilitating community engagement, and marketing and promoting the town of Digby for tourism and economic development purposes. So the coordinator would work closely with other municipal staff to understand municipal priorities and to develop relationships with external administrators, to facilitate the award and reporting of external funding, and will assist in the development and implementation of strategic initiatives and priorities of the town. This will be done in collaboration with multiple stakeholders and staff. So I met with the grants committee to review the job description. Committee questioned whether a 1-year term would be enough to properly evaluate the position success and Also directed me to explore funding sources that will aid in funding this position. So my present plan is to present the job description and my findings on any funding to the December committee of the whole meeting for council's review. One of the funding sources that was mentioned that I've completely exhausted my research on it, but it appears that it may not be what we're looking for, because basically that program, you have to basically hire somebody that is on unemployment. And so, you know, I mean, this position, you're gonna have a high caliber person or an individual, and you know, so just because we can get some funding, but I don't think it would do, unless it won't do it justice, unless there's an absolute.
Can't we find the right person, get them to leave their job, go on unemployment for 2 weeks and
Well,
hire?
we might be able to do that, but I don't know. So.
Well, there might be someone unemployed, you never know.
Anyway, I know that I did talk with Mayor Cleveland, and he was, because he was going to check with Nova Scotia Works as well on what they may have available. So, because that program is through Nova Scotia Works, that I didn't think it was at first, but it's called something else, but then when you read down through it, it's done through the Nova Scotia Works program, so.
Good.
So the RIP funding in Racket Road, the seawater flooding project, so the tender has been awarded to Dexter's Construction in the amount of $246,895 plus HST. The form of agreement has been executed. The construction is expected to start on December 6th and has started on December 6th. So it's already underway, and it's expected to be substantially complete by December 31st. I hate to jinx any project, but because sometimes when I get some information and I release it to council or to the public, monkey wrench gets thrown in the middle of it, but they anticipate that they're only probably gonna be there a couple of weeks at the most, and they're gonna be done.
Well, there's hope for Christmas.
Yeah,
That's good.
so,
Would it be done in time to be paved, or would the paving plant be closed by then?
no, they've got paving right up until, yeah.
Great.
That's the thing with Dexter's, is because they get their, you know, I mean, when they showed up there this morning, they showed up with their equipment and a small army, and they were off to the races, right, so. I guess they've got it milled now down to the dirt. And so basically they said that that's what they wanted to do, they milled it down to the base, and then they're gonna build on that base so they don't have to, take the base out, but if the base is solid, then they can just build on it, so. So, the town reissued public service notices concerning the road closures. I'm gonna hit Deep Talks. There seemed to be quite a lot of chatter on comments.
Yes.
And,
Everyone's thrilled with the stairs to the beach.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but there was a lot of negative about the road closures too, right? So, we purposely, when we put it on Facebook, we purposely, because it's a public service announcement, we shut the comments off, just because it's a public service. If we want comments, we want to, you know, but we're telling people this is what's happening, folks, and, you know, this is your notice, and we don't need, but then somebody shared it on Deep Talks, and then that's where it went kind of viral. But I guess we'll be okay.
you know, it'll be all right. Pretty hard to fix a road if you can't close it.
Progress comes at a price.
Next is the Digby Area Housing Coalition. So, I met with Jenny Gillis and discussed the land inventory of property owned by the town of Digby. So the coalition is looking for vacant town-owned property within town limits that could be used to accommodate housing. I explained that the inventory list had been compiled and all town properties, town-owned properties within town were included, which also indicates their current status as to what they are being used for. Ms. Gillett requested that the coalition have access to the inventory list for their review. And so my response was that the inventory list was compiled for internal use and that it could not be circulated without the consent of council. She then requested that council be asked whether the inventory list could be given to the coalition for review. So I have some concerns in releasing the inventory list at this time, as council has not reviewed or discussed the list to make any determination of whether any of the properties can be considered surplus to the town's needs or have been designated for housing or will be designated for housing. Therefore, I would recommend that council review and determine what properties that could be used for affordable housing and release that list, the list of those properties. So basically, you know, if you give, I guess my fear is if you get, it's, number one, it's not a public document at this point. Council hasn't made it, accepted it yet, it made it a public document. So, if you gave it to any group, and I'm not picking on the coalition by any means, it'd be any group, then they could say, well, they don't really need that for, they're using it for that, but they don't really need it, and there'll be undue pressure on council members and stuff and staff to do something different with that property. That's my, sort of my fear at this point.
Kind of, it's almost like, in my mind, it's the cart before the horse. They should figure out their project and then ask council for something suitable that can work.
Well, in my discussion with her, and I mean, you know, spent probably 45 minutes to an hour with her, and to talk about the different things, and you know, she's saying, well, you know, we need 5 and 6 acres. Well, I said, you know, we don't have that type of vacant land. I said, there's only 2 parcels that may be consolidated to give you that kind. But I said, you know, that's just vacant land, and currently it's not serviced. And so, you know, it's gonna cost a fair amount to.
Like 48 acres out beside the shell.
Huh?
Isn't there like 40 some acres out beside the shell?
Yeah.
It's an
So,
environmental nightmare.
My bad.
anyway, so I guess, you know, I don't know what council's thoughts are on the list. I mean, it was prepared, I prepared it as directed by council. The list, as far as I'm concerned, belongs to the council until such time that they declare it a public document. And so.
So can we review that in January, maybe the whole thing, or?
Yeah, it's hard to do anything without seeing the list.
Yeah. I mean, the list is on the cloud.
Yeah, it's on the cloud.
Yeah, right, so, but it's just basically, the thing is, you know, when you look at how much of the property is actually vacant, and that could possibly be used for housing or a housing project, but the thing is, it's like, you know, they already sort of indicated that, well, you know, things like that we've already taken initiative in like, you know, the old Tribune property, for one. We've already spent taxpayer dollars investing in it to meet the, basically the requirements of Nova Scotia Health. And they gifted us that land and said it can't be used for, it has to be used for wellness and things like that. Not to say you can't stretch housing into sort of,
As
well,
good as your intentions would be to provide them that list, you can't because there are other nefarious interests that may take advantage of that information.
Yeah.
Whether they're builders or developers or real estate agents or.
well, that's it. It becomes, that's the thing. And then we'll be inundated with all kinds of requests. Well, I know you fellas are sitting on that property, will you sell it to us, right? And, I mean, we've already had that with a piece in the south end, right? We had unsolicited, people asking about property, and, so. Anyway, so, if, that's the thing, we put it on the whole agenda, for January, and,
Sounds good.
So the last thing is the campground, DB campground lease, or the assignment of lease and the lease amendment documents are in the process of being executed. And is expected to be completed by next week, which is this week. Basically, the new owners, as I call them, were in town on Friday and Saturday. So on Friday they came and they signed their document, their portion of the documents. I had to send a document over, the assignment of lease had to go over to St. John to get Lorette to sign, or Wilson to sign. And she emailed me, she said she already put it in the mail today, so I should be getting it back in a day or two. So that should be done. And we also received the appraisal of the property, town-owned property. So that's going to be discussed at committee whole. Or not maybe in camera session for it.
All right. The motion to approve the CAO report.
So move.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Visionary Recreation Commission report.
Reports in the package. Try to answer any questions that you may have.
I know last time you talked about the theater, and I sent you a quick email the other day, I don't know if you saw it, but I guess we have access to the theater now, so they've been working on that, so. We'll have more
Yeah,
details, we'll have more details. when I
Yeah.
send you.
Something group up the valley where they were sort of fighting the battle, is it went?
I think so, yeah, that's where it's coming out. She didn't give me any details, she just said that.
I figured there was some movement because I was asked to be the technician and play in February and they've booked it, so
Okay, good,
it looks as good.
good, good. I don't know if you know any more about it, Peter.
No, I don't. Just to wait and hear the report from the meetings that they've had. So.
Yeah, so that's good news. Deacon Area Tourism Association.
Same thing, reports in the package. I'll try to answer any questions that you.
Who's Doug?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it says on there that we've extended Doug. Who's Doug?
Doug is the gentleman they hired. I can't tell you his last name. I don't know. I will find out and
Okay.
send it out to you.
Right.
Because the one meeting that he was there, I was not, and, but I will find out.
Okay. Appreciate that.
well, just note that it says they've extended its contract to April, when we expect the levy to kick in. Well, that's when the levy would probably gonna be starting to,
Yeah. There won't be any money for the levy for a while after that.
yeah. And they're not gonna be, April 1st, they're not gonna be magically a bag full of money.
No.
That's the thing.
No, and they,
All right, Committee of the Whole. Move on to the Committee of the Whole. We do have some few recommendations. Someone would like to start with some of the recommendations.
Do them one at a time, Ralph.
It's best to do them all separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, you can do them all at once, but the thing is, if somebody may have,
Discussion on this.
Especially on one.
may not agree with one and then, you know,
Well, they make a motion that the human resources policy number 2014-08 paid holiday, as amended.
Seconder,
Seconded.
any questions on that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'll move that we accept human resource policy 2014-10 sick leave as amended.
Seconder,
Seconded.
all in favor, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Is it my turn to move the administrative policy number 2021-06, accepted payment method policy?
I'll second that.
Seconder, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence, Minister of Housing. Anything you want to add to that, Tom, or?
I guess basically it's the code of conduct that, people have been, some of the municipal units been asking for. And, it's still a work in progress, I guess, but it's sounds of it. There's a committee that's working on it, and, so hopefully they'll come to a conclusion sooner than later.
Going off for a while.
Just on that, you know, and as you probably remember when you were sworn in, there was a code of conduct that we have, that we adopted, and that was at that time it was NSF, or UNSM, which is NSFM. But it was their initiative, and I think most municipal units adopted that policy or that code of ethics. I think the reason that they were asking the province to come up with a new code of ethics was because there didn't seem to be any teeth in it, right? What happens if you did breach the code of ethics, right? And unfortunately, there's been a couple of units that had some issues with council members and that they don't really have a chance to, or a remedy of how to bring them back in line, right? So I think that's what this was about, and of course, I always say, careful what you wish for, because you might get it, and especially with Big Brother, Big Brother, the province for something, you may not like what you get at the end. So I'm a little fearful that they might go a little bit overboard, but we'll see.
Okay, correspondence, Town of Annapolis Royal. Interesting letter.
It was.
How would you like to proceed with that one?
I think we should ask them for all the information they have on it.
Yeah, I think, I would concur with what Bill's saying. I mean, I tried to do a little bit this afternoon, a little bit of research, and that Solana, whatever, Energy Inc. is, they've been around since 2015 or something like that. But their president or founder or whatever is from Bridgetown, and so it's somewhat of a local company.
Yeah.
And now they try to do some research on on the type of turbine, and the vertical axis turbine, and it's kind of, it's not much different than some of the other ones that are up at the near the bay tribe. This one apparently they're talking about putting it at low water mark so that, you know, the tide will leave it and they can do maintenance on it within that 2-hour window or whatever, and then it comes back. But I mean, I think there'll be opposition to that type of turbine because it's not much different than the ones there. They claim that it's gonna eat all the fish or chew up the fish and everything else, right? So it's different technology than what we're using down in Grand Passage and we plan to do in Petite Passage, because basically those are like little outboard motors that sit on the thing, and the blades go down and below the surface of the water and turn. So it's not much different than a propeller of a boat, right? So this one here is sitting down on the bottom and all kinds of things. So,
I'd be interested to know if there was any other funding partners they've asked before we were approached.
yeah, I mean, you know, they're asking for, well, it depends, if they only got two them and us as a partner, then it's 30-some thousand dollars. I think they're looking for 67.
And the one other thing I'll add is in terms of getting all their information, they mentioned a grant that's in there. I'd like to know what grant they're applying for, to know what the probability of them actually receiving it is. Because we don't want to necessarily agree to a partnership if that's pie in the sky and not gonna happen. Because that would be a relatively expensive project for,
Just they're still looking for grant money to clean up the old tidal power plant too. So would that become entangled in another grant stipulation? And would you be on the hook for it? Who knows, right?
yeah, so just to make sure that they're not too wrapped up in other
I don't know if
stuff
they
that
have
could,
I don't know if they have anything to do with that though. I think that's mostly Nova Scotia Power, I would assume, once they build it, so. All right, so
We can, you want to respond saying that we appreciate
Request some more information?
any type of information, more information. Right?
yeah. And I will say from knowing a little bit about turbines from a friend who's worked on some projects before, I think it's much better that they're looking at something that's gonna go at low water and not gonna be exposed to constant currents like all day long, because there's nothing they've built so far that's been able to sustain the currents in the bay. So you either need surface or something that's going to have a lengthy break multiple times a day to be able to be there for the longer haul. You won't generate as much electricity, but you can still do probably quite well with it. So seems like it's a better idea than the let's go for everything and then just have it destroyed and floating across the ocean.
all right, we have a letter, a request from the Housing Coalition. So we did just get this. Tom, you read it.
Yeah. I skimmed it. Basically, they're asking for another reference for this project.
What did they ask for their first proposal that they put in? Was it the same thing?
That was a while ago, but that was before they became a this formal group, right? Yeah.
So, Works had a draft proposal for funding from CHTC. They've just received feedback on the proposal today. Their proposal will be broken up into two, so one available now, focused on tenants and prospective tenants of the housing we plan to develop. Sharing retrofitting buildings or building new, and the second for sector grant local projects available as of April 1st, 2022, focused on preparations for actual building surveying, land checking out buildings, getting architects, engineers, none of that. Do have some money left this fiscal year. There's money left this fiscal year for community-based tenant initiative fund. I'd like to ask us to support letter of reference for this project. What's your wishes? Do you want to take time to read a little bit more and bring it up next meeting?
I think time was of the essence for me.
Yeah.
Because the deadline is closing quickly.
Yeah, it is, for most of them.
Yeah, I just literally probably got this at 3:45 today. No, I didn't get this, I got the first email from her asking whether if she put a letter together, whether it would be on the agenda, and I said yes, and you give it to me by a certain time, and I can.
So we give them a letter of reference, it's not committing us to anything.
Letter of support.
No, so basically, it's like a, you know, I think that's what I'm trying to get my head around the difference between a reference letter and a letter of support. And I think that basically, we're, the reference letter is probably indicating that we acknowledge that they exist or something. And
It's, I think, a component of that, Tom, is a lot of these grants need to be paid to a municipal unit.
Yeah.
And then actually doled out, they couldn't go directly to a group, and I'm guessing, that's what they're more leaning towards, is to help with, if they get it, it has to come to us and then be paid out.
So can we get this group to come in and present to us maybe in the new year, like January, just to see what's going on? It's really hard to make decisions on what they're doing and, you know, wanting to land things and what properties we have, like, it'd be nice to see what they're doing.
well, I mean, like, I think the question that Councilor Turnbull brought up, about does it commit us to anything by giving a reference letter or not? It doesn't, other than the fact that it may commit us to accepting funds on their behalf, right? Well, and if that's, I guess I'm gonna have to have a discussion with Nancy or somebody just to make sure to understand what it is that she's really asking for,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And, you know, because I'm surprised that if they can't give the money to them, it needs to be a municipal unit, we should have been in on the ground floor with the application, right? So that's why I'm wondering whether that is the case, may not be the case, but usually it says right up front, if you can't, you know, it's gotta be a municipal unit.
Yeah.
And we've done that for other organizations, right? We've been the you know, sort of the front that goes through it and you know, you pass everything through and manage the funds and just essentially you gotta fill out a financial report to the people who give you the money and you're sort of responsible to make sure that it's all above board and how it's spent the way it's supposed to be spent and all that. But, it's not something that we haven't done before, and we probably would. It would be council's decision for sure, but from an administrative point of view, it's not something that would be out of the way. Right?
Yeah, I think where they referenced, they're a relatively new board, they may have overlooked that, you know, that requirement. In terms of time, I mean, I'd be supportive of them, like of giving them a letter. I think this comes back to something that you brought up, Councillor Sonia, a while ago. Their first point on the project is determine determine the type of housing the community wants and where. That's been done, just like it's in perpetuity. They're doing this with
No one's executed it.
yeah, and you know, that would be one thing that we've got to have a little bit of a better, you know, communication between each of the different groups to say what.
And we have to be careful because there is funding available to council from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities to do that work.
Yeah.
So if it's done without us knowing and then we apply for funding the second time without it, we won't get it.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't think we would get it.
Most likely not. But, yeah, the letter I'd be in support of, even without having all the questions necessarily answered. It's just, I think I would want to see them and have a presentation or hear
It's
from
a
them.
bold paint swath to say, could we get your help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With what? Financially, morally,
Mm.
with paperwork, what exactly do you want? Yeah.
So,
So I can certainly touch base with Nancy and say, you know, the council is supportive, I just need to know exactly what it is that you're asking for.
because it could be brought up at the committee of the whole.
Yep.
And, that'll give us enough time to,
Well, do we want to invite them to the December committee of the whole? Maybe that's in your discussion, maybe they can get something together in time for that.
You can, Leslie, do you know?
I do have one other delegation, I believe, in December. The Splash Cat folks, I think, are coming in December.
It kind of operated on the fringes and, you know, it'd be nice to have a discussion.
It would be nice to have a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you
Hard
know,
to support what you don't know. what you support.
ultimately, they're gonna end up in this council chamber, they're gonna end up in the municipal council chamber, asking for
Same sorts of
support
meetings.
or financial support or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we need to be, informed of what they're doing, so.
Yeah.
You know,
To get a better understanding of it.
so. Alright, so, okay,
Yeah.
and that's, I can contact her and, so do you want them to come at committee hall, or do you want them to come at committee hall, I guess?
Yeah.
I guess it would be, if she needs this letter ASAP, that's question one.
Yeah.
And question two, could she come and discuss what the plans are and where to go?
Yeah.
Alright, so, if they need the letter, I can supply her with the letter. If they need it tomorrow, type thing,
And
but,
that's the question, is it because you want the money to flow through us if you get the money
Yeah.
in this application? Is that what you're looking for, or is there something else?
and, but the council would like to invite you, if the urgency of the letter is dealt with, then, you know, we could say, well, do we need to do it in December, or can we do it another?
Because I know their next meeting, I don't think is until January.
Yeah, that's right, that's what I thought is that I still get the emails and the invites and stuff, so, I know that, Jeff Sunderland called me to ask me what this group was up to, because he hasn't really been in the loop, right? And, well, I said, I noticed your name was not, and I don't know why. I guess we're just lucky, I guess. But I
They
said,
just haven't figured out that contact point yet, that's all, it's an oversight.
yeah, so, and anyway, I said, I haven't been able to attend any of the meetings, even though they are Zoom and that, but I just haven't been able to do that. But I said, you know, it's good to get the emails, because you get some, the information is still flowing, right?
Right,
yeah.
Even though you're not there, you know, she sends every report once in a while as to what everything, so.
I
you
kept
did
pushing
good.
her because the meetings that we had as a resource group, just the people sort of helping them get the committee going. We kept saying, it's time that the committee has to take over. You have to get your board together, you have to have a meeting.
Yeah.
You can't just be a committee of one.
Yeah.
And so finally, that's because of scheduling and what people were doing, but it's happening now, so they've met once, I think, at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the thing is, then just make sure that I've got it right. If they definitely need that in the next couple days, the letter, and I find out exactly what they want,
Yeah.
then I can provide them with a letter.
Yeah.
And invite them to a future January or February committee, a whole meeting for them to bring us up to, council up to speed on what their projects are, the plans, right?
Sounds good.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, no new business. And we need a motion to move into camera.
So moved.
Second.